Hello and welcome. Have you ever noticed that scrolling through headlines, it's always the grim stories that seem to jump out? It's not just you. Our brains are literally wired to pay more attention to negative events. Psychologists call this the negativity bias. We tend to attend to, learn from, and use negative information far more than positive information. In fact, as journalists say, if it bleeds, it leads. A way of acknowledging that stories about crime, tragedy, and disaster grab readers' attention more than happy news. This tendency goes way back in our history. Evolutionarily, being alert to danger was a life or death advantage. Spotting a rustling in the bushes, maybe a snake, was more urgent than noticing a pretty flower. Modern neuroscience echoes this. Bad news sets off alarm bells in our brains. Negative information automatically activates threat responses, gearing us up to avoid danger. In other words, when our ancestors heard a warning cry or saw a predator, their brains hit the brakes and focused. Today, the same survival circuit lights up when we read about a catastrophe or conflict, making bad news inherently attention-grabbing. Inside our skulls, this bias lives in part in the limbic system, especially the amygdala, our fear center. Studies show that alarming news jolts the amygdala and stress pathways, increasing vigilance and arousal. As UCSD psychologist Susan Tapert explains, negative images and headlines spark more brain activity than positive information, and bad news grabs and holds our attention more strongly than good news. In one study, even when people were told a news source was unreliable, their brains still reacted strongly to negative headlines. Negative headlines dominated fast and slow brain responses in EEG measurements, essentially breaking through our conscious filters. The amygdala sends stress signals with each grim update, and the brain's reward circuit can kick in too, a mini dopamine hit when we see a new sensational headline. This creates a feedback loop. We feel a bit anxious, but also a jolt of curiosity or even relief at knowing more, so we scroll for more. Our phones and social media only amplify this hardwiring. News organizations know outrage hooks readers. In fact, studies of online behavior find that negative headlines really do get more clicks. For example, a massive analysis of viral headlines on Upworthy showed each extra negative word in a headline bumped its click-through rate by about 2.3%. A Stanford study of nearly 30 million tweets from news outlets found that they posted almost twice as much negative content as positive. The posts that went most viral were almost always the angriest or scariest ones. Typically, it's the negative, highly arousing stories that get the most traffic, researchers report. In short, our doom-scrolling feeds are engineered for our own biases. They push the high-drama, fear-inducing headlines we're primed to click on. This negative content also stays with us. Psychological research finds bad news is more sticky in the brain. We tend to weigh negative information more heavily, and we're more likely to remember a dark headline than a sunshine story. Think about it. You might vividly recall hearing about a tragic event, but forget the positive news of the day. That makes intuitive sense. One bad outcome can signal future danger, so our minds rehearse it. Neuroscience experiments echo this. Negative news increases physiological activations, heart rate, sweat responses, etc., and is recalled better later on. All this comes with a cost. Psychologists warn that constant exposure to tragic news can leave us anxious and exhausted. It's called doom scrolling, because we literally scroll through waves of bad news, feeding our fear circuits. Over time, the cascade of stress can distort our outlook. Experts note that too much grim news can make people perceive the world as more dangerous than it is and can contribute to higher anxiety or mood issues. Indeed, one study found that after a terrorist attack, people who consumed hours of related news were far more likely to experience acute stress than those who limited their exposure. But knowing our wiring helps. Our inclination toward doom is not because we want to be miserable. It's an ancient survival instinct that doesn't always fit a world of 24/7 media. By understanding it, we can try to balance our information diet. Next time a horrifying headline beckons, remember, your brain is just doing what it evolved to do. You can pause and ask yourself if you need all the details right now. There are tools, routines, or even just small breaks you can take to avoid overload. In the end, the story of our fascination with bad news is also a story of adaptation and choice. Our brains inherited an alarm system that once kept us safe, but now that system is wired into our devices and screens. Being curious about science means also questioning what holds our gaze. We can learn to seek out positive news and context just as intentionally and train our attention like a muscle. Our ancient brains crave information. Let's feed them wisely. Thank you for watching, and stay curious